Before I start, I want to offer my condolences to the families of the victims in Half Moon Bay. Just devastating news yet again, but obviously it hits so close to home when it's in our own backyard. So just terrible news, and everybody with the Warriors organization is thinking about the victims and the family members today, and we're just devastated and just want you to know we're thinking of you.
These things happen at an astonishing rate. Do you sense that there will ever be a point where it becomes too much, or should we have passed that point already?
I think I thought that point happened already, with Sandy Hook, and that was sort of the moment where a lot of us realized this is an issue that's going to take an avalanche of support, and then the courage of people in our government to help at least curb some of the violence. So when Sandy Hook happened and we just didn't get as much momentum as most of us felt we would, that was really eye-opening and devastating. And so we're going to continue to deal with this on a daily basis because these mass shootings happen pretty much every day. And but most of them don't get that much publicity anymore unless it's something that resonates across the country. And so it's going to take the entire population of this country to sort of get the pendulum to swing and I think more than anything, we need to have senators and congressmen who can, on the Republican side, who can run on a campaign of gun safety and gun violence prevention and still think that they can win. Because if as long as all those candidates think they can't win their election if they support gun prevention, gun violence prevention, gun safety measures, common sense laws, it's been proven that people are most of those people are going to put their job and their power ahead of the lives of their fellow citizens.
On the same topic, sort of, but does it ever get challenging for people like you and Pop who are, wired into some of these things to keep basketball top of mind?
Yeah. And I imagine we're going to have a moment of silence tomorrow before the Memphis game. That'll be back-to-back moments of silence. So I don't know if I had to count the moments of silence that I've been part of here, in the Bay that we've observed before Warriors games. It's for sure double figures. And it just feels like we're just doing the same thing over and over again. But that's why it's so important for everybody to join the fight, and whatever that means. Maybe it's contributing to, one of the many gun violence prevention groups out there, like Brady or Giffords or March for Our Lives, or locally a group like Live Free. Maybe it's having conversations with family members, with your neighbors. One of the things I learned was that the words you use in these conversations are crucial. You never use the phrase gun control when you're talking to a gun rights activist because it sounds like it's government control. And so it's important that you learn how to have these conversations. And it's important that people understand we can have Second Amendment rights and protect people's rights to own a firearm and at the same time have really common sense laws in place. Things like background checks, things like safety training, things like registration, things like let's not have weapons of war in the hands of our citizens. There's a reason we don't allow tanks on the street. There's a reason we don't allow automatic weapons. So why did we draw the line at semi-automatic weapons? Like those have been unbelievably deadly in most of these mass shootings. There's no reason. And I think one of the things I think about all the time is, our founding fathers, who we hold in high regard for good reason. They were very wise when they put together our government. If at the time there had been mass shootings in schoolhouses and villages, and do you really think they would have said, yeah, that's okay, we'll just do this? No, of course not. They would have adapted the laws. They would have figured out we've got to do better. And so just sit here and think, well, we should just honor this exact law, even though that's in question too, given that many legal experts disagree on the wording of the Second Amendment. But let's just adapt like we have with a lot of other things in the Constitution. Let's figure out what we can do to protect our children, protect our fellow citizens. And we know what those things are, but we have to have everybody, not everybody, but we have to have the vast majority of people in this country actually step forward and say, this is enough, and I'm going to support candidates that are going to fight for gun safety measures, common sense gun safety measures. Because we know from research that the vast majority of people do support common sense gun safety measures, but it has to translate to our politics and our elections. Pick and roll coverage.
Yeah, don't want to change topics, but I will. We were talking to Steph after last game, and the late game collapses of recent, and he said something he's observing is a little bit of hero ball happening down the stretch. So I was just curious, are you seeing that, and just how would you assess your group's chemistry right now?
The chemistry's fine. Our guys get along great. We have really good people in that locker room. But the execution isn't happening. I think there is some hero ball. I think guys, want to make the big shot. But I don't think it's necessarily 100% driven by the want for glory. I think it's more lack of execution. It's more just we've got to be reminded and we've got to practice our late game ways of getting better shots. And so we had a good practice today, and I think that'll help. We've had probably 7 or 8 games this year that we feel like we should have won, and only a couple where we won that we should have lost. And that gap is the difference between being the 3 seed and being 10th where we are right now. So very small margin for error, and we've got to get better on those margins.
What's just the latest with James Wiseman, and what has he been able to do at practice?
He practiced fully today. We didn't scrimmage. There was nothing live, but he looked good. He's moving well, and I think he's questionable for tomorrow, so he's getting close.
Steve, Draymond said something the other day on his podcast that along the lines of, part of the reason why the season has been as it is because of him, and that he can't be the leader he wants to be because, as he put it, sort of, we all know what happened. Have you detected any of that from Draymond, his maybe loss of ability to lead?
I mean, it's a good question, and Draymond acknowledged it. I think, this team is already filled with young, fresh faces, and so the leadership that has to come from within doesn't all fall on Draymond's shoulders. All of the vets need to contribute to that, but Draymond has obviously been our leader. I've called him our heartbeat many times, and so he feels that way. So it's affected, the way he communicates with the group. But there's nothing you can do about it. You as coaches, we continue to try to have open dialogue with the group, with individuals. We try to keep things moving forward. And I've said this a few times, but I really do believe we're right there. Our bench is playing really well. In the beginning of the season, our bench was struggling. Our starters were great. Now it's kind of flip-flop. We've got some starters struggling, but our bench is really coming along. So it's very possible for us to put this together. But again, just a few little things that we've got to continue to work on.
If that is a problem for Draymond, that he feels he can't do what he did, do you see that changing, that maybe he can work back more into that?
Draymond is still our leader and still the guy who's going to, be vocal during games, during practice, and he's doing a great job of that. But I think his comments were basically that he's more self-conscious than he would have been because of that incident.
A quick detour. Do you have Brock Purdy fever, and have you been following that? What's your impressions of the Steph Curry of the 49ers?
I definitely have 49er fever. They've been amazing to watch on both sides of the ball. Incredible defense, and then all the weapons on offense, and Purdy's doing such a good job of keeping everybody involved and making good decisions and making really great throws, and it's fun to watch. So pulling for him hard on Sunday.
Have you ever seen you can think of in any sport a guy that has come out of nowhere like he has and leading a team deep into the playoffs?
Maybe Fernando Valenzuela. As a Dodger fan, growing up, he sort of came out of nowhere, and it was like just Fernando mania, happened, and he became unhittable. And but yeah, it's fun to see these stories. It's a great reminder that the scouting in every sport is an inexact science, and so much of sports is about the puzzle that you put together. If you put 5 all-stars on the court, that's not necessarily a good thing. You have to have players that fit together and work well together, and it's great to see guys who were drafted low or undrafted, or in his case, the last pick in the draft. Great to see success come to those guys, because it's a good reminder. There's talent everywhere. It just may not be obvious all the time where that is.
Going back to the Draymond comments, he specifically said that he felt like there's just been a general lack of accountability, and he took ownership for that, saying that's in part because of him and what you mentioned, just being more self-conscious of his leadership. But have you noticed a lack of accountability, and can that maybe explain some of this season's shortcomings?
Well, I mean, that's a tough phrase, because then you say, well, what does that mean? To me, our guys are accountable. Everyone readily admits their mistakes. I do the same thing. I didn't feel like I coached a great game the other night. I told the team that. I feel like our players are all very accountable for their performances. We have a lot of dialogue within the group about, with film sessions, and guys have no trouble being accountable and admitting a mistake. So what does that mean? I understand what Draymond is saying. Like, we aren't closing games, and we're not getting better in the areas where we need to get better. So that's accountability too, but it may be a slightly different meaning than what some people might think of it as.
Last game, Andrew didn't play too much in the second half. Just wondering, do you think that it's more of a rhythm thing coming back from that injury, and is it just really hard getting back from such a long absence that he had?
I do think the long absence hurt him. It's the first time he's ever gone through this in his career, to come back in the middle of the season and then find your rhythm against a bunch of guys who are in mid-season form. And Andrew was playing so well before the injury. So I think there's been some frustration since he returned. The conditioning was a factor the first few games, and then I think he broke through that. And then I think just the rhythm, the confidence, but it'll come back. I've told him everybody goes through this. Even Steph and Clay, the greatest shooters on earth. Everyone goes through this in this game during an 82-game season. So you just have to fight your way out of it, and by working and competing and staying aggressive.
And then we saw how kind of up your guys were the last time you guys played this team with the Grizzlies. You can kind of feel the vibe. Can you feel that vibe when you get into the building against a team like the Grizzlies or the Celtics you have some history against? And can that help you guys as far as getting going forward?
Yeah, for sure. That can help us. Memphis is on the rise. They've got a great young team. Obviously, we had a hell of a series with them last year. So there's been some healthy bickering and a little bit of a rivalry. So it's fun when we play them.
I mean, last time you guys played them on Christmas, that was one of your better wins of the season, and you did it without Steph. What from that game is an important to bring into this matchup? And
I think just the force that is required when you play against Memphis. They're really a big athletic team, and everybody's got to rebound. Everybody's got to hit bodies. Everybody's got to dive on the floor for loose balls. They're a big physical team. They're young, and so we have to match the energy that they bring.
You've talked a lot this year about Jonathan Kuminga's defense. Do you see a world in which he could close games?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure he closed the game the other night, or if not entirely, he was out there for key stretches. But he's really doing a good job. Thought he played great the other night, and with that kind of defensive mentality that he's brought to the game, he's really carved out a role for himself.
Going off of what Steph said about hero ball, I mean, I think if the numbers are correct, you had 18 assists and 3 turnovers in the first half. You had 9 or 10 assists and 8 turnovers in the second half the other night. Is that symptomatic of hero ball where the ball stops moving, or is that something else?
I think that's more execution. I think that's where the other team says, all right, we got to pick up our defense. Let's get in them. And Brooklyn has a very good defense. They switch everything, and not easy to beat them at the point of attack. And we stopped executing. The ball stopped moving. It's an area where I didn't think I did a good job as coach. I thought we could have got into some different sets to create some more movement and flow. So I thought that was more the case.
Steve, you mentioned it was a good practice. What makes it a good practice? What are the cues you got? And as a coach, how do you work on end game execution?
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons it was a good practice is because it was the first one we've had literally in 10 days. So any practice is a good practice right now. But we were able to work on the execution of some of our sets that's been lacking lately. So just tightening up the detail allows you to execute better in the game.
Steve, I think it was like last 2021 in December when I asked you about the Grizzlies and, that possibly becoming a rivalry. And you were like, there has to be some playoff series and, more things have to unfold. It's been over a year since then. I just heard you say it's becoming a little bit of a rivalry. Even the NBA, this is rivalry week, so to speak. Do you see that kind of unfolding now with the Grizzlies kind of becoming, that type of, rivalry and atmosphere with that team?
Yeah, the playoff series, I think, made that happen. And then, the league put us on Christmas Day together. And so the league is pushing for it as well. And it's a classic story of, a young team trying to knock the aging team off the mountain. So makes for a good story, and it's definitely fun to compete.